Are you ready to become a change maker? Our 48-week postgraduate program in public policy or the PGP may be just the thing for you. This hybrid program is designed to give you both the theoretical foundation and hands-on experience needed to excel in policy making. With a mix of expert-led webinars, in-person workshops, and policy simulation exercises, you'll gain real-world skills along with personalized mentorship. Through our policy programs, we connect good people to good ideas and good networks. Apply now at the link in the description to make an impact.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this new session on all things policy. We're going to be talking about publishing in India, publishing books in India, and what goes into putting together a book or a piece of research to get it published. I'm joined by Kavitha Rao. She is a writer and a journalist and the author of 4 books. Her latest book is Spies, Lies and Allies, The Extraordinary Lives of Chatto and Roy. It's a historical nonfiction book. Thank you for joining me today, Kavitha.
Thank you so much for having me, Leah. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you. So we'll just dive right in. So you've written 4 books. When did you realize that you wanted to write books, and what was your understanding at the time of what it meant to write and get a book published?
So my first book came out in 2014, and it was published by Westland, which still remains my publisher. And it was called Everything You Wanted to Know About Freelance Journalism, but didn't know whom to ask. So it came about by luck in a way, because I was a freelance journalist at the time, and I wrote mostly for foreign papers and magazines from India, from Bangalore, because they obviously pay better. And it occurred to me that there are so many people who want to write on a freelance basis and perhaps want to get their message out, including perhaps people, in policy organizations like Takshashila, but they don't know how to go about it. They don't know how to approach an editor or how to get published. So I decided that I might want to write a how-to book on that, and I had a co-writer, Charukesi Ramadurai. So it was actually quite a easy book to write, because we just took all our experiences and put it into a book. And I think that sort of sums up how to get started in nonfiction writing. Start by writing what you know that you have expertise in, because that was a very easy book to get published, to both write and get published. Actually, that was the easiest of my books because I had a co-writer. So that was the easiest book. So that's how I started. That was all the way back in 2014. And coming to your next question, what I thought about publishing back then. So back then I was very ignorant. I didn't realize that you needed an agent, you needed to write a book proposal, you needed to do lots of things before you actually got the book published. The entire process is very long. I also was very lucky because my agent, Jayapriya Vasudevan, who is from Jacaranda, which is one of India's oldest literary agencies, I think the oldest really. She was a good friend. So in that way, I was lucky and possibly privileged. Having said that, that connection only takes you so far. You don't get to publish books because you're friends with someone. So I ran this idea by her, and she said, it's a good idea, but I need a detailed book proposal. So that's the next step. You write a very detailed book proposal. For my first book, it was easily about since I was a newbie in that area, it was easily about 8,000 words or so. So, a very detailed book proposal saying why the book is needed, what you plan to write, what your expertise is in the area, what's the platform, what's the market, things like that. So I wrote all that and sent it to Westland, and they went for it straight away. So that's how, it all began.
Right, right. And for our listeners, can you explain what goes into putting a book together? How does one go about signing deals with publishers or finding an agent and acquiring that funding?
So there are, it depends on whether you're writing a non-fiction or fiction. If you're writing fiction, sadly, unless you are really famous and, maybe you're a celeb or something, you have to write the whole book. Okay.
Right,
And for both, you have to write the whole book and send it out, because generally publishers want to see the whole book in fiction, because they want to see that you can write the whole book. And fiction, it often depends on the ending or the middle and things like that. So you have to send the whole book out. There are exceptions if you have a personal connection, possibly, unlikely though, or if you're a celeb kind of person, or if some kind of background. But generally, as a newbie fiction writer, you have to write the whole thing. If you are a non-fiction writer, you can get away with writing a very detailed book proposal, which will include a synopsis of the book, 3 sample chapters, and possibly a very detailed bio saying why you should be the one to write the book rather than anyone else, and your expertise, your platform, etc. So you can get away with writing less, not the whole book. uh, for both non-fiction and fiction these days, you do need an agent, because Indian publishers are increasingly reluctant to accept books without an agent. And why this is because nearly everybody is writing a book. I think, I saw this line from the other day on social media. It's like, right from Roman times, I think Cicero said, times are bad, nobody listens to the parents, and everybody's writing a book. So everybody's writing
right.
a book.
Yeah,
And because of this, publishers are using agents to sort of winnow out the wheat from the chaff, and to select manuscripts that deserve to be published. So sadly, nearly everybody needs an agent. There are instances, and also certain areas, for instance, in children's literature, you don't need an agent. But generally, for fiction and non-fiction, you need an agent. India has many of these now, and it all depends on what your book is like. For instance, my agent Jacaranda, they don't do much commercial fiction. Okay. They do a bit, but not that much. They do mostly a lot of non-fiction, and they don't do much children's literature either. They do more literary fiction and non-fiction. But there are other agents who do a lot of commercial fiction, or some agents who specialize mostly in translations. So you need to do some homework and figure out which agent does what, and approach
right,
them with your detailed book proposal. Okay. And a book proposal takes a long time. For instance, for Spies, Lies, and Allies, because it's quite a deeply researched book, I took maybe 10 months to put a proposal together. And the proposal itself was some 10,000 words. Same
right,
goes for Lady Doctors. I took a similar amount of time, and it's probably around 10,000 words. A very detailed proposal saying exactly what the book, every chapter, where it's going to go, who is going to be featured, who I'm going to talk to, etc. So you do need very detailed proposals these days, because uh, more and more people are writing books, and there isn't that many. Publishers have to be more choosy. So then you
right.
should approach your agent. And quite often people tell me that agents don't respond, which is sad. This is because they get just too many emails. A lot of the emails are full of absolute garbage. But be persistent, and keep approaching agents, because these days you do need an agent. There are occasions, if you are a complete expert in your field, that publishers may approach you directly. For instance, I think Juggernaut approaches a lot of experts in the field directly and
Mm.
asks them to write a book, like people who were on Shark Tank or people who have some particular expertise. They have approached them directly. But generally, you need an agent. The agent will then send the proposal to the publisher. The publisher will discuss it in their meetings. And it's all very structured in that way. It's not as easy as they will publish anything they think is good, because there has to be a market for it. And
Yeah.
markets rise and fall. For instance, right now, nonfiction is very popular. Earlier, fiction used to be very popular, but these days, a lot of people are not reading fiction. So, nonfiction has become popular in India. So, they will have a long discussion about it. Then they will get back to you. You will have, negotiate a deadline and a contract and an advance. Generally, the contracts are pretty standard. And then you have to get on and write the book and hopefully keep somewhat to your deadline. Even then it can take a very long time before it's published, because then it has to be edited. uh, Different publishers have different levels of editing, and then it has to fit into their schedule. So the whole thing can easily take years, depending on how fast a writer you are. So
Yeah.
you have to play the long game. It's very much you need a lot of patience, really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But so let's say I was going to write something in nonfiction, and
mm,
I gave in a blurb of what exactly I wanted to write about and had a structure in place, but required to, let's say, travel or do more research into the body for this text.
right.
Would the publisher support us that way? Would support the writer that way?
Generally, blurbs, just a short blurb would not work unless you have incredible expertise in your field, like unless you're like maybe possibly an Ambani or a Birla or somebody, or maybe like, for instance, Jagannath's new book, The Chief Minister, and I think it's by A.S. Daulat. He has a lot of expertise. People like that who have a huge amount of expertise can get by on a blurb. The rest of us possibly have to write a very detailed proposal. Regarding funding for travel research, it's incredibly difficult to get it, because
Right.
publishers, I think most people don't realize a very simple thing, which is that a bestseller in India, a country of 1 billion, is 10,000 copies. If you have,
Right.
and most writers in India, unless you're, say, like a Dalrymple or somebody really big, Chetan Bhagat previously at least, but not, maybe not even now. Unless you're somebody like that, most people in India don't even sell 1,000 copies of their books. All those books that you see, on social media hyped about, it's a bubble. People saying they're reading it, they don't sell more than 1,000 copies. So what that means is that publishers have very little funds for sending you on research trips, and a lot of writers self fund themselves through family money and things like that. I only started writing historical nonfiction when I serendipitously moved to London, and I'm very close to the British Library. I'm in central London, which is obviously free to use. So
Yeah.
that is where I have got my resources. And people in Delhi can possibly access the National Archives in Delhi, which is, that is available. But the rest of us, it is incredibly difficult to get funds out of publishers for traveling and research. Some people manage it, but most people don't. Uh, so then the next option is to try to look for grants. Grants are also very rare. In India, I know of only one grant for nonfiction, which is the New India Foundation's grant, but that is only for nonfiction books post independence, not pre
Right.
independence. So both my books are mostly pre independence, so I wasn't eligible for that. So I didn't even qualify. So it is incredibly difficult for people to find grants. In India, I don't know of many grants. Then there are some foreign grants. A vast number of them require you to be resident in, say, the UK or the US, even if you're not a citizen. So that doesn't work for many. And then there are others, they're very competitive. It's not easy to get grants. I wish, more organizations, maybe, corporates like Tata's or Infosys would give funds for writing non-fiction books, because I think that's the single biggest problem for many Indian writers, is that you don't have the funds that foreign writers have, and you don't have access to those libraries. And there are so many archives that you need to access, which you can't easily, or which are simply not available in India. So it is incredibly difficult, and that problem is, it's just always going to be there, which is why writing heavily researched nonfiction books has become a labor of love. I mean, even writing fiction is a
Yeah.
labor of love, but you
Yeah.
spend less money, say, on travel or research or whatever. It's become a labor of love when confined to people who possibly have some other source of income. I should mention Chiki Sarkar of Juggernaut. She does a series of videos on her Instagram, which are
Right.
extremely useful in sort of decoding publishing. And she has very clearly said that you cannot look to books to be your main source of income. And I totally agree. You have to do other things. I do some other things. So, you have to do things like teach or edit, or, do something completely, and find your income from other sources, and write books in your spare time, which is hard enough as it is, really, because it's extremely difficult to write a book and in the time you have at the end of a long working day. But there
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be many option. I mean, this is also the case in the UK. I mean, I think somebody did a survey and they found the annual median income for a writer in the UK is £7,000, which is like
Oh,
nothing,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so even here, people do other things. They teach, they try to get grants. Getting grants is extremely competitive here. I have applied for I've applied for a lot of grants. I've never seemed to have gotten any. I must
Yeah.
be doing something wrong. Uh, so I just continue, really, the as best I can. But uh, that is really the only funding. There's not much funding. You just have
Right.
to do your best. There are a couple of residencies in India, Sangam House. I think there is a Goa one as well. Uh, but that's not really funding for research. It's just that you can stay there for maybe a few weeks and write.
Right.
So yeah, I am quite cheered that the New India Foundation recently has given grants to two great books, great non-fiction books. So I must, kind of mention them. One that I haven't finished reading both books, but I have like leafed through them, and I can, tell that they're very good. One is Rama Bhima Soma by a young writer called Shrikar Raghavan, which is about the writers from Karnataka, writers like Anantamurthy, Karant, Kuvempu, people like that, who basically wrote for social justice. That's a very interesting book, a great book. He has got funding. And another book which came out maybe a couple of years ago was The Day I Became a Runner by Shohini Chattopadhyay, another great book.
Okay.
So NIF has given funding for this, which we should be grateful for, but it's only post independence. So pre independence books are not given that
Yeah.
funding, and of course it's very competitive. Not every great book
Yeah.
will get funding. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, how does a publishing house or how does a writer identify how to market their book? And which audience would be best suited for a book like in, let's say, nonfiction?
at the time Lady Doctors came out, I had a huge following on X, formerly called Twitter. I used to be very active. I have now gone off it almost completely. I have not deleted my account, but I have gone off it almost completely because it was just making me angry and depressed all the time. So
Yeah.
I mean, X is very useful, but these days I find it's just been totally overrun by bots and you know generally insane, crazy people who want to pick a fight for everything. So, but at the time, I did have quite a big following on social media. I have now moved to Insta, but I don't have a big following there. And
Right.
unfortunately, writers these days are expected to do everything. You're not just expected to write the book and edit the book and fact check the book. You're also supposed to have a big platform. And I am in two minds about whether this platform actually translates to sales, because
Mm.
you could have, 70,000 followers on X, and it doesn't mean that they will all buy your book. They may just be looking at your incessant tweeting but not actually buying your book. So even on Insta you could be like this massive influencer. It's not certain that people will actually buy your book. To be honest, in Indian publishing, nobody knows what actually makes people buy your book. And my previous book, Lady Doctors, did very well. It went into 6 editions. I'm not to brag, but it's the truth. And to be honest, I don't know why. It's
Right.
just that the subject matter appealed to people, and a lot of people wanted to read about women. There were a lot of women readers for that, and maybe a lot of corporates also gifted it to their staff, which I never thought would happen. But this is what I mean by, a way that it can be marketed. Some pharmaceutical companies bought it and gifted it to their staff, and it became a Women's Day gift, which wasn't really, something I ever thought about, because I honestly think that Women's Day is just a marketing gimmick. It's just,
Right.
thing dreamt up by greeting card manufacturers, but that's what it was used for. People gifted it to their staff on Women's Day, so it sold very well. But I don't think it was because of my social media presence. But having said that, publishers like you to have a social media presence. My advice for writers is to not get sucked into, talking about every single thing that passes your way. For instance, if you are not working in, defense policy, there is no need to comment on the India Pakistan war. According to me, you
Right.
just look like a fool. Okay, I mean, at least that's the way I do it. Some other people, some other writers think that yes, you should comment on everything that passes your way, because writers are part of broader society. I think that you should comment on things you know about, like, you find your niche, possibly what your book is about. My entire social media is mostly devoted to talking about historical things, because I'm a writer of historical nonfiction and other books in the space. uh, Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but this is how I feel. Like, I'm being genuine. I'm not just, talking about every single thing on the place of the planet.
Right.
But other writers do it another way. So it really depends on what you feel comfortable with and what the writer does. But try to build up some kind of platform. It could even be a blog. It could even be a newsletter, or a Substack. I mean, Substacks are very popular these days, and I think several people have managed to convert their Substack into a book, into a commission book. So Substack is a great way to, I think, reach people who are actually interested in your subject. Having said that, I have not started a Substack or a
Right.
podcast, because I think Amit Verma has a book out after his podcast has become, Seen and Unseen has become really popular.
Yeah.
A podcast is also another great way, but try to find some way. It could be a Substack, it could be a podcast. I think X has kind of fallen into disrepute, so maybe Substacks or podcasts are better, or a newsletter, something where you can display some of your writing and something of your personality, and something about who you are, what kind of writer
Yeah.
you are. And or even possibly a YouTube channel. I'm terrified of YouTube, but other people are doing it very well. I don't think it I will adapt to it very well. I'm quite a late adapter in many senses, so I haven't done all these things, but other people are doing it very well. I mean, many, I think, YouTube stars have started writing very popular books. Suddenly I forget the name of that guy who wrote that extremely popular how-to book. It is published by
Right.
Juggernaut. It's not coming to me, but a lot of these how-to books, for instance, you start on YouTube, because the fact is that nobody is reading books these days. So you have to have other strings to your bow. Writers have to
Yeah.
find, do other things as well. So
Yeah. So, if I were to, if I, let's say, had a manuscript in hand, how would I approach? How do I do my research as to which publisher to approach? Do I go cast my net wide and send it to everyone, or do my research and figure out who would be the best to publish my book?
Well, these days, this is mostly the problem of the agent, because publishers just don't seem to be accepting unagented manuscripts at all, especially in nonfiction. But having said that, there is no harm in doing some research yourself, so that at least you can check that your agent is sending it to the right people. Or, for instance, if you go to a lit fest and you run into a publisher there, that's worked for some people. You can,
Yeah.
you can at least know what they're doing. I mean, different publishers just before writing a book, you should read to see what is in that space. Who are your competitors? Who are they writing for? Which publishers make an Excel document? Which publishers are publishing what? For instance, Westland, my publisher, is doing so much really thoughtful nonfiction. For instance, their latest book just nominated for the Pulitzer, which is by Rollo
Right.
Romig, about Gauri Lankesh. So they're doing a lot of very thoughtful nonfiction. They're also doing some offbeat fiction. Not the standard kind of commercial fiction. For commercial fiction, Penguin is doing more of that, and LF is doing some beautiful kind of let's say more illustrated books and things like that. In nonfiction, so you should do a bit of research. I mean, go to a bookshop and see who is publishing what, and make an Excel document of that, and then try to approach that publisher. I mean, other things also matter. For instance, you might want your book to be marketed very well, or you might want an international name like Penguin or Bloomsbury, or you might feel like you want your book to be marketed very well, and you don't need an international name, but you just want the book to be in all bookshops. There are also these considerations. Sadly, money is absolutely lacking. I mean, advances are tiny. Okay, I mean, average advance will be like something like 40,000 rupees, which is nothing. Okay,
Yeah.
and you can get more, but then you have to demonstrate. You know, you have to demo. I'm talking about for a beginner writer, it'll be very low. To get more, you would have to demonstrate selling books and actually being succeeding. Advances are very low. Royalties are they are about 8.5%. That's sort of standard. It's hard to negotiate higher unless you are, again, Chetan Bhagat. 8.5%. And that works out to very low, like, because you're not selling that much. And let's
Yeah.
not forget, your agent will take 15%. Generally, the standard is agents will take 15%. And some people get very angry about this, and they're like, why should an agent takes 15%? And this is why also increasingly I see that self-publishing is going to take off. And in India, it's not considered very, respectable to self-publish your own book. And the quality of self-publishing in India has not reached the lengths that it has, the heights that it has in the West. In the West, self-publishing is a big thing. It's slowly catching on in India, but not yet got there, where you can self-publish your own book, through Amazon, or Amazon is probably the best, but and some other things as well. I haven't looked into that at all, because self-publishing is for a certain kind of book. For instance, for non-fiction, you need to demonstrate some expertise and knowledge, and therefore you need a non-fiction publisher to kind of sort of certify their certificate that your book is worth reading.
Yeah.
You need the name of Penguin or Bloomsbury or Westland. self-publishing works best when you're writing genre, like possibly romance or fantasy or maybe even crime. And if you write very fast and you want to put out 3 books a year and you don't want to wait for the publisher to kind of, publish them, and you are confident you have possibly a good platform. For instance, the writer Andali Wajid, who is from Bangalore, so many people may be familiar with her. She is doing very well with self-publishing. She's a hybrid writer. She has traditional publishers as well as self-publishing for certain books. She's very prolific. She writes in the romance genre. So for her, it makes sense to self-publish. For me personally, I do not think so. So I haven't looked into it very deeply. So, but this is possibly the future for many people who want larger advances and want to make more money from publishing and also want more control over the whole process.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kavitha, for joining me today. And I hope, I know that anyone listening to this will have a lot of takeaways when it comes to the effort that goes into writing and publishing a book. And of course, if they're interested in writing and publishing themselves, what they need to do and the steps they need to take when doing so. So thank you so much for joining us, and hope for you, everyone else, to tune in to the next episode of All Things Policy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.